Darwin Platform Group of Companies is one of the fastest growing diversified Indian conglomerates with global footprints. It is setting up offices globally and tying up with companies across the globe from multiple sectors. The company has ventured into real estate and construction, stockbroking and finance, arms and ammunition, mining, airlines and many other sectors.
Every day you see headlines and get to hear questions about India's economic growth. And the big headline really is how fast is India growing and what is its rank in the global economic firmament. And the key point, if we can look at the data, is that India continues to be the fastest growing economy in the G20 nations. You heard that absolutely right. The group of 20, the most powerful 20 nations, within which there is of course a smaller grouping called the G7, but in the G20, India is the fastest growing economy. And it doesn't make it only the top performing economy in Asia, but the fastest growing economy in the G20, which is spread all over the world. So how is this happening? Let's first take a look at some of the key data that will show you the relative position and the growth of India. The first data that I want to show you is with regard to Asian countries, and look at the GDP of the Asian countries that is right there on your screen. At 18.5, almost $19 trillion, China remains the largest by far in Asia, and of course again globally as well, but after the United States. And if you look at China and its growth rate at 4.2%, followed by Japan and then India. The third largest in terms of GDP is India, but please note the growth rate of India, 6.3%, which has now been updated to 6.8% by Moody's. Other observers are saying 6.9%. The government of India expects 7%. We are possibly in a situation where this rate of growth will be even faster than what it is being projected on the screen. And then of course Indonesia and Saudi Arabia at the fifth. So note the key point with regard to India's growth. Our rate of growth is the fastest, and therefore very soon we will surpass Japan to become the second largest economy in Asia. And I continue to focus on Asia primarily on account of the fact that a very large mass of growth, global growth, people and future aspirations exist in Asia. The developed world has enjoyed supremacy for hundreds of years, but for a variety of reasons, the pivot to growth is happening in Asia, and that's why India remains the top performing growth rate wise economy in Asia. Now look at Singapore, Bangladesh, Iraq, Iran and perhaps Pakistan does not even bear mention here because they are very small. Singapore, if you look at it in terms of territory, a very small island nation, but punches way beyond its weight, and that kind of overall GDP is very, very significant. Look at Bangladesh. So the only two countries with 6% plus growth in the top 10 in Asia that we have shown you is India and Bangladesh, not Pakistan. Pakistan is in the doldrums. They now have a new government. It's old wine in a new bottle, and it's a mix of various compromises, political compromises that have been dictated by the Pakistan army, which is the real power behind the throne and in fact on the throne as well. And Pakistan's economy not really up for comparison by any chance, although many people in Pakistan would like to delude themselves and try and compare with India, but they are just there because they are a neighbor, a pesky neighbor at that. But other than that, Pakistan really doesn't even figure anywhere in the overall list of rankings. Bangladesh, which we helped break away from Pakistan, get them their independence, growing much faster than Pakistan, and the second highest growth rate in Asia is Bangladesh. Now take a look at what's been happening for the past 2-3 years, and that will tell you why India remains the top performing economy in Asia as well as globally. The key feature to note here when it comes to the data is the fact that it's not a one-off. The most recent quarter data that came for India at 8.4% was way behind estimates, and that's why I told you earlier that we are likely to be closer to 7% than before. Now look at growth trends over the last 3 years. 2021 COVID year, post-COVID year, 2022, 2023, the rate of growth. China, see the very sharp dip that has happened post-COVID and other problems that they seem to be having in their country. In fact, they have now cancelled their annual press conference, which was held by the Prime Minister and used to be seen as an annual press conference where a lot of their economic policy direction could be gauged by journalists. That's been cancelled. It's unprecedented, hasn't happened in the past as far as China is concerned, and that also sends out concerning signals, not only about the growth in China, but about their overall political system right now. Japan, look at the growth rates. That country, of course, a powerhouse, but you can very clearly see that being left behind. Saudi Arabia also, after a very good 2022, seeing a dip. Now, this is why you can see that India remains in a very, very sweet spot, and that's why most rating agencies, analysts, brokerages, foreign banks, everybody, companies are talking about India's potential. And why is India growing at the fast rate that it is going? You have to go back to COVID, which perhaps in some ways was a pivotal moment for the entire global economy and India in particular. Two things happened post-COVID. Much of the developed world responded with massive stimulus, including the United States. They printed a lot of money and pushed it into their economy. Growth came back. The post-COVID recovery was faster, but it came at a very, very significant price, which was very high prices, because there was so much money, so much liquidity out there in the system. Prices went through the roof, and Americans, for example, have seen a cost of living crisis which they have never seen in almost a generation. Now that led to another multi-billion-dollar Inflation Control Act, but that's a separate story. What happened in India? The government of the day was quite conservative fiscally. It did not throw money because it said, let the economy come back and we will provide targeted support. Of course, there was a lot of suffering also. The migrant laborers crisis that happened, that lasted for some months. That was a very, very big humanitarian issue, but that also shows how human capital works in urban India and resides in Bharat, in our villages, and that was specific to that situation. Again, government spending through various programs, including the farm wage initiative that is done, also provided some sort of help. The second bit is infrastructure spending by the government of India. All these massive flyovers, bridges, highways, the upgrade of railway stations, the other associated infrastructure rollouts that we have seen in the past 10 years, a part of Modinomics really, that massive infrastructure spending has led to a lot of money being spent in various sectors, and that has trickled down into the economy. We have also seen that inflation, because of certain set of policies, including retail inflation, has been tapering off, coming down slowly. The government of India has taken the hit of petrol and diesel price increases. It has not passed it on almost for the 1.5 years and more, and that has kept inflation down. What we have also seen is that while the government is spending, we've also seen very significant increase in tax collections, and that goes back to other reforms, including the introduction of GST, for example, very high indirect tax collections also being ascribed as a reason for the recent quarterly GDP growth increase that India has seen. Direct tax reforms, digitalization, the fact that the income tax department now has far better tools and goes after evaders far more strictly than in the past. All of that has led to much more revenue collections for the government of India that obviously being spent. Of course, the government continues to borrow, but it has been conservative in that regard, and that is why international observers praise India's handling of the economy in the post-COVID phase, and that is bearing fruit. A lot of foreign investment is coming in. Private sector investment in India, which is our large corporations, which had kind of slowed down very significantly, and that goes back to 2012, 2013, 10, 12 years ago when there was a big crisis of confidence also, and that led to a big problem with bank loans to many companies. Those companies could not pay back their loans in time. That was called the NPA bubble. That has also been dealt with, and the public sector banking system, which had borne the brunt of that, is now in far better shape than we have seen it for perhaps many decades now. So all of that, government spending, lower inflation, infrastructure, private sector now borrowing money from banks to expand on its projects. In fact, RBI data shows that credit private sector has gone up 23%, and that is very good because it now compares with pre-COVID levels. So all of that put together means very clearly that ab ki baar 7% par is the key thing that a whole lot of observers are expecting. 4 lakh crore or $4 trillion is a target that's already been achieved. The next target is $5 trillion, and that is likely to be achieved in 3 or 4 years. But that's very clear that as far as India is concerned, it remains a bright spot, not just in Asia, but across the world. And imagine once we have Lok Sabha election results that come in, as expected policy, government continuity, a third term for Prime Minister Modi, the same set of policies flowing in. And if you've seen, a roadmap has been drawn up by the government that is to be implemented soon after the elections, and that will also add to some of the growth impetus continuing. So all in all, a very good picture as far as India is concerned, and in economic terms, the key slogan being ab ki baar 7% par. I'll see you again. Until then, goodbye.
Darwin Platform Group of Companies is one of the fastest growing diversified Indian conglomerates with global footprints. It is setting up offices globally and tying up with companies across the globe from multiple sectors. The company has ventured into real estate and construction, stockbroking and finance, arms and ammunition, mining, airlines, and many other sectors. Darwin